Before written history, before science explained the world, ancient peoples sat beneath the stars and told stories. Stories of gods who shaped mountains with their hands, of heroes who fought monsters, of love and betrayal and quests that changed the world. These weren't just entertainment. They were how our ancestors understood everything. Where thunder came from, why seasons changed, what it meant to be human. Tonight, we're going to hear these ancient voices. These tales passed down through thousands of years, whispered from one generation to the next around countless fires, now whispered to you as you drift toward sleep. Every morning, the sun rises in the east, travels across the sky, and sets in the west. The ancient Greeks believed this happened because Helios, the sun god, drove a golden chariot pulled by 4 fire-breathing horses across the heavens. It was dangerous work, requiring perfect control and an exact path. Too high, and the earth would freeze. Too low, and everything would burn. Only Helios had the skill and strength to manage it. Helios had a son named Phaethon, born to a mortal woman. The boy grew up on Earth, and other children mocked him. They said his father wasn't really a god. They called him a liar. Phaethon, hurt and angry, traveled to his father's palace in the east, where the sun began its daily journey. He climbed the steps to the golden hall and stood before Helios. "Father," Phaethon said, "I need proof that you're my father. The other children don't believe me. They laugh at me. I need something to show them." Helios embraced his son. "You are my child. I swear it by the river Styx, the most sacred oath a god could make, one that could not be broken. To prove my love, I will grant you any wish. Ask for anything, and it's yours." Phaethon didn't hesitate. "Let me drive the sun chariot, just for one day. Let me bring the sun across the sky, and everyone will know I'm truly your son." Helios's face went pale. Of all the things Phaethon could have asked for, this was the worst. "Ask for anything else," Helios begged. "Riches, power, immortality, anything but this. The chariot is too dangerous. The horses are wild, breathing fire, almost impossible to control. The path is treacherous. Even the other gods don't dare to drive it. You're mortal, untrained. You'll be killed." But Phaethon insisted. He'd made his wish, and Helios had sworn by the Styx. The oath could not be broken. Helios had to grant his son's request, even knowing it would end in disaster. At dawn, with terrible reluctance, Helios helped Phaethon into the golden chariot. He gave him instructions, warnings, desperate advice. Keep to the middle path, not too high, not too low. Hold the reins tight. Don't use the whip. The horses know the way. Just don't let them stray from it. Please, my son, be careful. The gates of dawn opened. The horses, feeling an unfamiliar hand on the reins, leaped forward. They were creatures of fire and fury, barely contained even by Helios. With Phaethon, they sensed weakness, hesitation. They began to run wild. Phaethon pulled on the reins, but the horses ignored him. They climbed higher into the sky, far above the usual path. The earth below grew cold. Rivers began to freeze. People shivered and prayed. Then the horses plunged downward, diving toward the earth. The chariot dropped, bringing the sun terribly close. The heat was devastating. Rivers boiled and evaporated. Forests caught fire. Mountains burned. Entire cities were consumed by flames. The earth itself began to crack, creating deserts where there had been fertile land. Libya became a wasteland of sand. The people of Ethiopia had their skin darkened by the intense heat. Lakes turned to steam. The seas began to boil. Phaethon struggled desperately with the reins, but he had no control. The horses ran wherever they wanted, dragging the sun chaotically across the sky. More of the earth burned. The world was being destroyed. From Mount Olympus, Zeus watched in horror. If this continued, the entire world would be consumed. There was only one way to stop it. Zeus raised his lightning bolt, took careful aim, and threw. The bolt struck Phaethon, killing him instantly. His burning body fell from the chariot, tumbling through the air like a shooting star, and landed in the river Eridanus far below. The horses, freed from Phaethon's weak grip, instinctively returned to their stable. Helios, grief-stricken, retrieved the chariot and completed the day's journey, though his light was dim with sorrow. Phaethon's sisters, the Heliades, mourned him by the river where he fell. They wept so long and so hard that the gods took pity and transformed them into poplar trees standing on the riverbank. Their tears became amber, hardened sap that drops into the water even now. The story of Phaethon is about hubris, excessive pride, and overconfidence. Phaethon wanted glory without earning it. He wanted to prove his divine heritage by doing something divine, but he lacked the power and skill. His ambition exceeded his ability. He demanded something he wasn't ready for, and it killed him and nearly destroyed the world. But it's also about fathers and sons, about love and limits. Helios loved Phaethon enough to grant an impossible wish, even knowing it would end in tragedy. He was bound by his oath, trapped by his own love and honor. He had to watch his son die because he'd promised him anything. The scars of Phaethon's ride remained on the earth. The deserts of Libya, the burned skin of the Ethiopians, the dried riverbeds, all were explained by this myth, physical evidence of the day the sun went wild. The story wove itself into the landscape, making the geography itself a reminder of what happens when mortals reach too far. At night, when the sun has safely set and the world cools, you can imagine Helios in his palace, preparing for another dawn. He harnesses the horses himself, checks the chariot, makes sure everything is perfect. And maybe he thinks about Phaethon, about the son who wanted so badly to be like his father that he died trying. The memory lives in every sunrise, every careful journey across the sky, every day that passes without disaster because someone skilled enough controls the reins. In the mortal city of Lydia, there lived a young woman named Arachne who could weave better than anyone alive. Her tapestries were works of art, colors blending perfectly, scenes so lifelike you'd swear the figures were breathing. People came from across Greece just to watch her work, to see her fingers move with impossible speed and grace, creating beauty from simple thread. Fame made Arachne proud. When people praised her, saying she must have been taught by Athena, goddess of wisdom and crafts, Arachne scoffed. "I taught myself," she said. "My skill is my own. I don't owe anything to Athena. In fact, I'm better than she is. I could outweave the goddess herself." This was dangerous talk. The gods didn't tolerate mortals claiming superiority, but Arachne didn't care. She was young, talented, and convinced of her own greatness. "Let Athena come," she announced. "Let her face me in a weaving contest. I'll prove I'm the better weaver." Athena heard these boasts from Mount Olympus. She decided to give Arachne one chance to recant. The goddess disguised herself as an old woman, hobbling on a cane, and visited Arachne's workshop. "You're very skilled," the old woman said, examining Arachne's work. "But surely you should show more respect to the gods. Athena is the patroness of all weavers. It would be wise to acknowledge her gifts." Arachne laughed. "I acknowledge only my own talent. If Athena thinks she's so great, she can come here and prove it." The old woman straightened. Her wrinkles smoothed. Her bent back became tall. The cane vanished. Athena stood before Arachne in divine radiance, and everyone in the workshop fell to their knees in terror. Everyone except Arachne. "You want a contest?" Athena asked, her voice cold. "Very well, let's weave." 2 looms were prepared. Both goddess and mortal chose their finest materials: silks, golden thread, dyes of purple and crimson and deep blue. They sat at their looms and began. Athena wove scenes of divine glory. She showed the gods on Mount Olympus in majesty and power. She depicted Zeus on his throne, Poseidon commanding the seas, Apollo with his lyre. In each corner, she wove small scenes of mortals who had challenged the gods and were punished, warnings of what happened to those with too much pride. Her work was technically flawless, grand, and impressive. Arachne wove something different. She showed the gods scandals and crimes, Zeus transforming into animals to seduce mortal women, a bull carrying off Europa, a swan with Leda, a golden shower falling on Danae. She showed Poseidon's violence, Apollo's failed loves, the gods drunk at feasts, behaving no better than mortals despite their power. Every scene was IKEA perfectly rendered, capturing not just forms, but emotions, implications, judgments. When both were finished, Athena examined Arachne's tapestry. The work was perfect, the technique flawless, the composition sophisticated. Objectively, it was as good as Athena's own work, maybe even better in its boldness and emotional impact. But the content was unforgivable. Arachne had used her gift to mock divine authority, to expose the gods' flaws, to suggest that immortal power didn't equal moral superiority. This could not be tolerated. Athena tore Arachne's tapestry to shreds. Then she struck Arachne across the face with her weaving shuttle. The blow left a mark, and the humiliation broke something in Arachne. She had lost everything. Her work destroyed, her pride shattered, her talent meaningless if the goddess could simply destroy it on a whim. Arachne found a rope and hanged herself, but Athena wasn't done. She brought Arachne back from death, but transformed. Arachne's body shrank and twisted. Her limbs became 8 spindly legs. Her human form compressed into a small body. Head and thorax merged. She became a spider, doomed to weave forever, but never again to create art. "You wanted to weave?" Athena said. "Then weave. For all eternity, you and your descendants." And so Arachne became the first spider, arachnid in Greek. To this day, spiders weave intricate webs, echoing their ancestors' talent, but only for practical purposes, catching prey, not creating beauty. They work alone in corners and shadows, their webs destroyed casually by anyone passing by, their artistry unappreciated. The myth of Arachne is a warning about pride and challenging authority. In the Greek worldview, there was a natural hierarchy, gods above mortals, and that order must be respected. To challenge it was to invite destruction. Arachne's skill was real, but skill alone wasn't enough. She needed humility, recognition that the gods must be honored regardless. But modern readers often sympathize with Arachne. She was right about her skill. She spoke truth about the gods' behavior. She challenged unjust authority. Her punishment seems cruel, disproportionate. Athena appears vindictive, unable to accept criticism or competition. This tension is part of the myth's power. It presents a story that ancient audiences read one way, as moral instruction about knowing your place, but that modern audiences read differently, as tragedy about talent destroyed by tyranny. The transformation into a spider is particularly cruel. Arachne doesn't lose her weaving ability entirely. She still creates intricate patterns, but they're no longer recognized as art, just functional objects that anyone destroys without thought. It's a punishment that mirrors her crime. She used art to diminish the gods, so her art is diminished, made mundane. Every spider you see is supposedly descended from Arachne. Every web is an echo of those beautiful tapestries she once wove. The spider works with the same precision, the same geometric sense, the same instinctive artistry. But it's gone unnoticed, unappreciated, the weaver hidden in shadows, the work brushed away casually. Sometimes watching a spider build its web, the methodical placement of radial threads, the careful spiral from outside to center, the whole structure emerging from nothing, you can imagine Arachne's fingers moving like that, creating something beautiful, not knowing that her pride would transform her forever, that her desire to be acknowledged as great would make her small and forgotten. King Minos of Crete kept a monster in a labyrinth. The Minotaur, half man and half bull, born from his wife's unnatural union with a sacred bull. The labyrinth was designed by Daedalus, the greatest inventor and craftsman in the Greek world. Daedalus created a maze so complex that anyone who entered became hopelessly lost. Only Daedalus knew the way out. But Daedalus fell out of favor with King Minos. The king, angry and suspicious, imprisoned Daedalus and his young son Icarus in a tall tower. They had food and water, but no freedom. Daedalus could see the sea beyond the tower walls, could see ships coming and going, but couldn't reach them. Guards watched every door. Escape seemed impossible, except by air. Daedalus was an inventor. He began collecting feathers, from the birds that landed on the tower's ledges, from the gulls that flew past. He gathered them carefully, saving everyone. He melted candle wax, and slowly, secretly, he began constructing wings. He built them carefully, binding smaller feathers with thread for the inner parts, using wax for the larger feathers on the outer edges. He created 2 pairs, one for himself, one for Icarus. They were beautiful and functional, mimicking the structure of bird wings. When the wings were complete, Daedalus taught Icarus how to use them. "Listen carefully," he told his son. "This is important. When we fly, you must stay at a middle height. Not too low, because the sea's dampness will clog the wings and make them heavy. Not too high, because the sun's heat will melt the wax. Stay in the middle. Follow me. Don't try anything foolish." Icarus nodded, but he was excited, barely listening. He was about to fly. Like a bird, like a god. The warnings seemed distant, unimportant. They strapped on the wings. Daedalus embraced his son once more, then stepped to the tower's edge. He jumped, and the wings caught air. He flew. Icarus followed, leaping into space, feeling the wings bear his weight, and suddenly he was soaring. At first, Icarus obeyed his father. He stayed close, matching Daedalus's height and direction. They flew over the sea, leaving Crete behind, heading for freedom. It was working, but flying was intoxicating. The wind rushed past. The world spread below like a map. Icarus felt powerful, godlike. He began to experiment, diving and climbing, testing the wings' limits. And slowly, without quite meaning to, he climbed higher. "Icarus!" Daedalus called. "Come down! You're too high!" But Icarus didn't listen. He was caught up in the joy of flight, in the incredible freedom. He climbed higher still, approaching the sun. The warmth felt good on his face. He laughed, exhilarated. The wax began to soften. Feathers loosened. But Icarus didn't notice until it was too late. A large feather detached and fell away. Then another. Suddenly the wings were disintegrating. Icarus felt himself falling. He flapped desperately, but more feathers came loose. The wings were useless now, just scattered feathers falling with him. He plummeted toward the sea, arms windmilling uselessly, the water rushing up to meet him. Daedalus heard his son's cry. He turned and saw Icarus falling, saw the broken wings, and knew there was nothing he could do. He watched his son hit the water and disappear beneath the waves. Daedalus circled back, searching the water, calling Icarus's name. But the boy was gone, drowned, his body sinking into the depths. Eventually, the body washed ashore on a nearby island. Daedalus buried his son there, on the island that would forever after be called Ikaria. Then Daedalus flew on alone, his heart broken, his incredible invention turned to tragedy. He reached Sicily and lived there for the rest of his life, but he never built wings again. The cost had been too high. The story of Icarus is about youthful recklessness, about ignoring wise counsel, about the dangers of overconfidence. Daedalus gave clear warnings based on knowledge and experience. Icarus ignored them because he thought he knew better, because the thrill of flying made him forget caution. But it's also about the tragedy of potential unfulfilled. Icarus was young, full of life and enthusiasm. He didn't fly too high out of arrogance or evil intent. He flew high because flying was wonderful and he wanted more of it. His crime was innocence, not malice. He paid with his life for a moment of joy. The myth has echoed through centuries. "Don't fly too close to the sun" became a warning about ambition, about reaching beyond your abilities, about the dangers of pride. Artists painted Icarus's fall. Poets wrote about it. The image of a boy with wings plummeting toward the sea became a symbol of hubris punished. But some modern readings are more sympathetic to Icarus. To fly at all was an achievement. Better to have flown and fallen than never to have flown. The middle path Daedalus recommended was safe, but also timid. Icarus reached for the sun, and though it killed him, there was something noble in that reaching, something admirable in his refusal to accept limits. This creates an interesting tension. Is Icarus a cautionary tale or an inspiration? Should we learn from his failure to respect limits, or from his willingness to test them? The myth doesn't give a clear answer. It presents the story and lets each listener decide. Daedalus escaped and lived many more years, but his life after Icarus must have been shadowed by grief and guilt. He built the wings. He taught Icarus to use them. He knew the dangers. Could he have done more to keep his son safe? Should he have refused to attempt escape, kept them both in the tower rather than risk flight? Every parent knows this fear, that your children will ignore your warnings, will take risks you can't protect them from, will suffer consequences you can't prevent. Daedalus gave Icarus the tools for freedom and the wisdom to use them safely, but he couldn't force Icarus to listen. He couldn't hold his son back from testing limits, and when Icarus fell, all Daedalus could do was watch. The sea still remembers. The island still bears Icarus's name. And sometimes, on sunny days, when birds fly high toward the sun, you might think of a boy with wax wings climbing toward the light, feeling invincible, not knowing that wax melts and feathers scatter, and the fall from great height ends only one way. The sky remembers too, and somewhere in the distance between earth and sun, in that middle space where flight is possible but dangerous, the warning echoes still. Not too high, not too low, stay in the middle, listen to wisdom, remember that wings have limits. When people died in ancient Greece, their souls traveled to the underworld, the realm of Hades. But to enter, they had to cross the river Styx, and the only way across was by ferry. The ferryman was Charon, an ancient being who had tended the river since time immemorial. Charon was not kind. He was gaunt and grim, his eyes hollow, his boat old and weathered. He spoke little and cared nothing for the dead circumstances or pleas. His job was to ferry souls across, and he did it mechanically, without emotion or mercy. But there was a price. Charon required payment, a coin placed under the tongue or on the eyes of the corpse at burial. This was the ferryman's fee. Without it, Charon would refuse passage, leaving the soul stranded on the riverbank, unable to enter the underworld, unable to find peace. Families made sure to bury their dead properly, always including the coin for Charon. To fail this duty was to doom your loved one to eternal wandering on the wrong side of the river, neither fully dead nor able to return to life. The Greeks feared this fate more than death itself. The river Styx was not just water, it was the boundary between life and death, between the world of light and the realm of shadows. Its waters were said to be poisonous. Nothing could live in them, and they corroded any container except those made from horses' hooves. The river flowed in total darkness, in silence except for the soft splash of Charon's oar. Souls waited on the near bank in crowds, pressing forward, desperate to cross. Those without payment pleaded with Charon, offering promises, begging for mercy. He ignored them all. Rules were rules. Without the coin, there was no passage. Once across, souls entered the true underworld. They passed Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guarded the gates. Cerberus let souls enter, but prevented them from leaving. The living were not welcome, and the dead could not return. Beyond Cerberus lay the realm itself. Most souls went to the asphodel meadows, A vast gray plain where the ordinary dead wandered as shades, dim, mindless, hardly aware of their existence. It wasn't punishment or reward, just continuation. An eternity of vague half-consciousness, all passion and purpose drained away. The truly wicked went to Tartarus, a prison far below even Hades' realm, where terrible punishments awaited. Tantalus stood forever in a pool of water that receded when he tried to drink, beneath fruit trees that pulled away when he reached for food. Eternally hungry and thirsty, the satisfaction always just beyond reach. Sisyphus pushed a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down just before reaching the top, forcing him to start over, again and again, forever. The truly heroic went to Elysium, a blessed realm where the sun shone and life was pleasant. Heroes feasted, competed in games, enjoyed an afterlife that resembled their glory days on earth. It was as close to paradise as Greek mythology offered, but most souls went to neither extreme. They simply existed in the gray space between, forgetting slowly who they'd been, all individuality fading, becoming just one more shade among countless others in the dim twilight of Hades' realm. The living sometimes visited. Orpheus descended to retrieve Eurydice. Odysseus came to consult dead prophets. Heracles came to capture Cerberus as one of his labors. But living visitors were rare and always in danger. The underworld wanted the dead, not the living, and escaping was difficult even for the greatest heroes. Rivers ran through the underworld beyond the Styx. Acheron was the river of woe. Lethe was the river of forgetfulness. Souls who drank from it lost all memory of their lives, all sense of who they'd been. Phlegethon was made of fire, not water, burning as it flowed. And the Styx itself, which the gods swore their most sacred oaths upon, because even gods feared breaking an oath sworn on the river that separated life from death. Hades himself, lord of this realm, was not evil. He was just doing his job. Someone had to rule the dead, had to maintain order in the afterlife, had to ensure the boundary between life and death remained firm. He didn't torture souls for pleasure. He simply maintained the system, kept everything running, enforced the rules of death. His wife Persephone spent half the year with him and half on earth with her mother Demeter. Her annual return created spring, the earth blooming when Persephone emerged from below. Her descent back to Hades brought winter, the earth dying, mourning Persephone's absence. The seasons themselves were tied to the cycle of descent and return, death and renewal. In the silence of night, thinking about the underworld, you can imagine that dark river, the souls gathering on its banks. Charon's boat, appearing from the mist. The ferryman doesn't speak. He just extends his hand for payment. You place the coin there. He nods and gestures toward the boat. You step in. The boat rocks slightly. Charon pushes off. The oar dips into dark water. You're crossing now, leaving behind the world of the living, entering the realm from which no one returns. The far shore approaches. Shapes move in the darkness. Cerberus growls. The gates of Hades stand open, and beyond them, what? The Greeks imagined gray plains and dim shadows, an eternity of half-existence. They found this prospect neither terrifying nor comforting, just inevitable. Death was the end of your story, and afterward came nothing interesting, just endless twilight. So live well, they said. Achieve glory. Make your name remembered. Because the afterlife offered nothing, and the memory of the living was the only immortality available to mortals. The river still flows, though no living person can see it. Charon still waits with his boat, though he ferries only the dead. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond this world, the underworld endures, timeless and unchanging, home to every soul that has ever died, will ever die, gathering in the shadows, wading through eternity, forgetting slowly what it meant to be alive. In the depths of Tartarus, the prison at the bottom of the underworld, A man stands in a pool of crystal clear water. He's desperately thirsty. His throat is parched, his lips cracked. The water reaches his chin, cool and inviting. He bends his head to drink. The water recedes. It drops to his chest, then his waist, draining away until the pool is dry. The man stands there tormented by thirst, unable to drink even though water surrounds him. Above his head hang branches heavy with ripe fruit. Pears, apples, figs, all his favorite foods, all within easy reach. He's starving. He hasn't eaten in what feels like ages. He reaches up to pluck an apple. The wind blows. The branches lift away, just beyond his grasp. He jumps, reaches higher, but the fruit stays tantalizingly out of reach. When he gives up, the branches descend again, hanging right above his head, fruit almost touching his hair. This is Tantalus, and this is his punishment. He will stand in that pool forever. Surrounded by water he cannot drink. Beneath fruit he cannot eat. Eternally hungry, eternally thirsty. The satisfaction he craves always just beyond reach. The word tantalize comes from his name. To be tormented by something you can see but cannot have. What did Tantalus do to deserve this? The myths offer several versions. In one, he was a king favored by the gods, invited to dine on Olympus. He stole their sacred food, ambrosia and nectar, and shared it with mortals, revealing divine secrets. In another, he tested the gods by killing his own son, cooking the body, and serving it at a feast, wanting to see if the gods would notice they were eating human flesh. They noticed. The gods were horrified. They reassembled the boy and brought him back to life. And they cast Tantalus into Tartarus, where he would suffer forever. Nearby in Tartarus, another king suffers his own eternal punishment. Sisyphus was clever, too clever. He cheated death twice, once by chaining death himself so no one could die, once by tricking Persephone into letting him return to the living world. Eventually the gods caught him and decided he needed a punishment that would last forever. They gave him a task. He must push a boulder up a steep hill. When he reaches the top, he'll be free. Simple. Sisyphus begins pushing. The boulder is massive and heavy, but he's strong. He strains and heaves, making slow progress up the slope. It takes hours of effort, sweat pouring off him, muscles screaming in pain. But he persists. The summit grows closer. Finally, with one last desperate effort, he reaches the top. He pushes the boulder onto level ground. He's done! He's free! But just as the boulder crests the hill, just as Sisyphus believes his task is complete, the boulder rolls backward. It picks up speed, tumbles down the hill, and comes to rest at the bottom. Sisyphus has to start over. Again and again and again. Forever. He pushes the boulder up the hill, and just before succeeding, it rolls back down. He's doomed to endless, pointless labor that can never be completed, that resets just at the moment of triumph. Albert Camus wrote about Sisyphus in modern philosophy, using him as a symbol of human existence. We all push boulders up hills, Camus suggested. We all repeat tasks that seem meaningless, that accomplish nothing permanent. Yet Camus argued we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding meaning not in completing the task, but in the effort itself, in the pushing. A third punishment exists in Tartarus. Ixion tried to seduce Hera, Zeus's wife. As punishment, Zeus bound Ixion to a burning wheel that spins through the sky forever. He spins eternally, burning, dizzy, unable to escape or die, or even lose consciousness. Just endless spinning and pain. And there are others. The Danaids, 50 sisters who murdered their husbands on their wedding night, are condemned to fetch water in jars with holes in the bottom. An endless task that can never be completed. Prometheus, who stole fire for humanity, has his liver eaten by an eagle every day, only to have it regenerate each night so the torture can repeat. Tartarus is a place of eternal punishments for the worst offenders. But the specific nature of each punishment fits the crime. Tantalus shared divine secrets and violated the most sacred trust, so he's tormented by things he can see but never have. Sisyphus cheated death through cleverness, so his punishment is repetitive labor that seems achievable but never is. Ixion tried to take what belonged to Zeus, so Zeus binds him in eternal submission. The punishments are creative, targeted, eternal. They don't end when the pain becomes too much. They don't offer any hope of parole or redemption. They just continue forever because these crimes were so terrible that finite punishment would be insufficient. The Greeks used these stories to explore ideas about justice, punishment, and infinity. What does it mean to suffer forever? Can any crime deserve infinite punishment? At what point does punishment become cruelty rather than justice? They didn't provide answers. They just told the stories and let people draw their own conclusions. Tantalus reaching for fruit that pulls away. Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill again, knowing it will roll back. Ixion spinning on his wheel. These images stuck in the imagination, became metaphors, entered the language. Sometimes life feels like Sisyphus's boulder, struggling toward goals that slip away just as you reach them, starting over and over, wondering if anything you do actually matters. Sometimes it feels like Tantalus, wanting things you can see but not have, being tantalized by possibilities that stay just out of reach. These myths name those feelings, give them shape, suggest that humans have always struggled with pointless labor and unfulfilled desire. But the myths also suggest something else, that these feelings, these struggles, can be born. Sisyphus keeps pushing. Tantalus keeps reaching. They don't give up even though they know their efforts are futile. There's a kind of dignity in that persistence, a stubborn refusal to surrender even when surrender would be rational. In the depths of Tartarus, in the darkness below the underworld, the punishments continue. The boulder rolls down the hill. The water recedes. The wheel spins. And the prisoners endure because they must, because there's no alternative, because ending isn't an option when you're already dead. The myths don't offer comfort. They offer recognition. Yes, life sometimes feels impossible. Yes, efforts often seem meaningless. Yes, desires frequently go unfulfilled. But you keep going anyway. Like Sisyphus with his boulder, like Tantalus reaching for fruit, you persist. And maybe, as Camus suggested, there's meaning in that persistence itself, in the choosing to continue even when continuation seems pointless. Far from the lands of the living, beyond the edge of the world, there is a cave where no sunlight reaches. Inside, darkness is absolute. The air is thick and still. And there, on a bed of soft poppies, lies Hypnos, the god of sleep. His twin brother Thanatos, Death, lives nearby. They are sons of Night herself, born from darkness, embodying the two states that bookend consciousness. Sleep and death, the temporary rest and the permanent one. Brothers who share the same features, the same gentle touch that closes eyes and stills breath. Each evening, Hypnos emerges from his cave and spreads across the world. His touch is soft, irresistible. When he brushes mortals with his hand or sprinkles poppy juice on their eyes, they fall asleep wherever they are. Kings on thrones, warriors in camps, mothers beside, cradles, all succumb to Hypnos' gift. He has 3 sons, the Oniroi, the dream gods. Morpheus crafts dreams of people, appearing in sleep as human forms, delivering messages or showing visions. Phobator creates nightmares, filling sleep with fears and terrors. Phantazos makes dreams of objects and landscapes, building impossible worlds from imagination. These dream gods live in the cave with their father. When mortals sleep, the Oniroi fly out, entering sleeping minds, creating the experiences that fill the hours of unconsciousness. Some dreams come through the gate of horn, true visions, prophetic glimpses, messages from gods. Others come through the gate of ivory, false dreams, illusions, fantasies that mean nothing. Hypnos himself rarely interferes with the waking world. He serves a function, fulfills a need, then retreats to his cave. But occasionally, he's called upon for special purposes. During the Trojan War, Zeus wanted to help the Greeks without Poseidon or Hera interfering. He asked Hypnos to put all the other gods to sleep. Hypnos was reluctant. Zeus had once punished him severely for doing this before. But Zeus promised a reward, one of the Graces as a bride. Hypnos agreed. He put all of Olympus to sleep. The gods' eyes grew heavy. One by one they drifted off, unable to resist Hypnos' power. Even Zeus himself, the king of gods, couldn't stay awake when Hypnos decided sleep was necessary. While the gods slept, events unfolded on Earth that they couldn't prevent or influence. This shows Hypnos' power. He's not a warrior god. He carries no weapons, but his gift is irresistible. Everyone must sleep eventually. Fighting it only delays the inevitable. When Hypnos comes, you surrender, willingly or not. Sleep in Greek thought was closely linked to death. Both brothers had gentle touches, both closed eyes, and broad unconsciousness. Sleep was called death's younger brother, a temporary version of what Thanatos made permanent. Each night when you slept, you practiced dying. Each morning when you woke, you were reborn. This made sleep both comforting and frightening. Comforting because it was temporary. You would wake again. Consciousness restored. Life continuing. Frightening because the line between sleep and death was thin. You surrendered consciousness, trusting it would return. But what if it didn't? What if sleep became permanent if Thanatos took you while Hypnos held you? The ancient Greeks had rituals around sleep. Before bed, they made small offerings to Hypnos, asking for peaceful rest. They avoided sleeping on their backs, believing that position made you vulnerable to evil spirits. They paid attention to dreams, especially vivid ones, believing they might contain messages from gods or the dead. Dreams were taken seriously in Greek culture. Temples to Asclepius, god of healing, had special rooms where sick people slept, hoping to receive curative dreams. The god would appear in sleep, prescribe treatments, sometimes perform dream surgery. Many claimed to wake healed, their illnesses gone. Prophetic dreams could show the future. Agamemnon dreamed that victory at Troy was certain, though the dream was false, sent by Zeus to deceive him. Hecuba dreamed she gave birth to a torch that set Troy ablaze, a true prophecy of Paris's role in Troy's destruction. The challenge was knowing which dreams were true and which false, which came through horn and which through ivory. Some philosophers questioned whether waking life was itself a dream. How could you be certain you were awake now? Maybe you were sleeping, dreaming of reading this, and would eventually wake to find yourself somewhere else entirely. Maybe all of life was a dream, and death was waking up. These questions troubled ancient thinkers as they trouble modern ones. The boundary between dream and reality, between sleep and waking, seemed less solid the more you examined it. Hypnos' realm blurred into the waking world, making consciousness itself seem uncertain. But most people didn't worry about such philosophical problems. They simply slept when tired, woke when rested, and accepted dreams as a normal part of existence. Sleep was necessary, like eating or breathing. You needed it to function. And if dreams came with it, strange, vivid, sometimes prophetic, sometimes nonsensical, that was just part of being human. Hypnos remains in his cave, surrounded by poppies, breathing the heavy air that makes all who enter drowsy. His sons prepare the night's dreams, some true, some false, some comforting, some terrifying. And as darkness falls and people around the world begin to feel tired, Hypnos stirs from his bed and prepares to do his work once more. His touch is coming now. You feel it, don't you? The heaviness in your eyelids, the softness creeping through your limbs, your thoughts growing fuzzy, less focused. This is Hypnos, brushing you with his gentle hand, inviting you to surrender to sleep. Don't fight it. Fighting only delays what must happen. Everyone sleeps. Every consciousness must rest. Even the gods succumb when Hypnos truly exerts his power. You are mortal, tired, ready for sleep. Let it come. The dream gods are preparing. They'll visit you tonight, crafting experiences from your memories, your fears, your hopes, your random neural firings. You'll see things that make no sense, that follow dream logic instead of waking logic. You'll meet people, some familiar and some strange. You'll go places, do things, experience events that dissolve like mist when consciousness returns. Whether your dreams come through horn or ivory, whether they're prophetic or meaningless, you won't know until you wake. For now, they're simply dreams, the experiences that fill the hours of sleep, the stories your mind tells itself when reason steps aside and imagination takes over. Hypnos' cave is calling. The poppy-scented darkness welcomes you. The soft bed of sleep awaits, and in the morning, you'll wake, consciousness restored, ready to face another day. But for now, for this night, let Hypnos have you. Let sleep come. Let dreams fill the darkness. Let the waking world fade into the realm where myths are still alive, where gods still walk, where anything is possible in the eternal story. We've traveled through many tales tonight. We've seen Phaethon fall from the sun chariot, his ambition burning the world. We've watched Arachne transform into a spider, her pride punished by divine anger. We've flown with Icarus toward the sun, felt the wax melt, experienced the terrible fall. We've crossed the river Styx with Charon, entered the underworld where the dead wander in shadows. We've witnessed eternal punishments in Tartarus, Tantalus reaching for fruit he cannot grasp, Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill again. And we've come at last to Hypnos' cave, to the realm of sleep and dreams. These stories are ancient. They were told around fires thousands of years ago, passed from generation to generation, changed and adapted and remembered because they spoke to something fundamental in human experience. The Greeks who created these myths are long dead. Their civilization has fallen, their language has evolved beyond recognition. But the stories remain. Why do these myths endure? Because they capture eternal truths about being human. We all have ambitions that exceed our abilities, like Phaethon. We all feel the temptation of pride, like Arachne. We all want to fly higher, like Icarus, even when wisdom says we should stay safe. We all must face death, crossing whatever river separates life from what comes after. We all struggle with punishments that seem endless, desires that go unfulfilled, labors that feel meaningless. The myths don't offer solutions to these problems. The gods in Greek stories are powerful, but not particularly wise or good. They're jealous, cruel, arbitrary. They punish harshly and forgive rarely. The heroes are brave but flawed, achieving great things but suffering terrible fates. The mortals are caught between forces they can't control, trying to live well in a world where the gods' whims determine everything. Yet the myths are hopeful in their way. They suggest that human life, however difficult, is worth living. That striving matters even when you fail. That creating beauty matters even if it's destroyed. That love matters even when it ends in grief. The myths acknowledge all the pain and unfairness of existence, but insist that existence is still meaningful. Orpheus lost Eurydice forever because he looked back, but his music was beautiful and his love was real. Arachne was transformed, but her weaving was magnificent. Icarus fell, but he flew. These things matter. The myths remember them. We remember them still. And in remembering these ancient stories, we connect to every person who has heard them before us. Every Greek child who listened to their grandparents tell of Phaethon's fall. Every Roman student who studied Ovid's Metamorphoses. Every medieval scholar who read Greek myths in translation, every Renaissance artist who painted Icarus or Arachne or Orpheus, every modern reader who encounters these tales and recognizes something true in them. We're part of that long chain of listeners and tellers, of people who found meaning in these old stories and passed them on. And perhaps someday, far in the future, someone will hear these myths and feel what we feel, that connection to the past, that recognition of shared human experience, that sense of participating in something larger than one lifetime. The myths don't end. New versions emerge. Modern retellings adapt the stories for contemporary audiences. Movies and books and plays reimagine the old tales. Phaethon becomes a warning about climate change. Arachne becomes a story about artistic freedom versus authority. Icarus becomes a symbol of human aspiration. The myths evolve, adapt, survive, because they're flexible enough to carry different meanings in different contexts. But beneath all the reinterpretations, the core stories remain. Someone flew too close to the sun. Someone challenged a goddess to a weaving contest. Someone couldn't resist looking back. Someone pushed a boulder up a hill forever. These images, these patterns, these narratives have become permanent features of human culture. Metaphors we use without even thinking about their origins. When you say someone is opening Pandora's box, you're referencing a Greek myth. When you call a long journey an Odyssey, you're invoking Odysseus. When you describe something as a Sisyphean task, you're connecting to those ancient stories of endless punishment. The myths have become part of our language, part of how we describe and understand the world. And tonight, as you drift toward sleep, as hypnosis' gentle touch pulls you into unconsciousness, these stories will sink into your mind. They'll become part of your dreams, mixing with your own memories and experiences, creating new combinations, new meanings. You might dream of flying, and somewhere in that dream will be Icarus. You might dream of water, and Charon's boat might appear. You might dream of endless tasks, and Sisyphus's boulder will roll down the hill. The myths live in that dream space, in the realm between waking and sleeping, between reason and imagination. They're not literally true. There was no Phaethon, no golden chariot of the sun, but they're true in a deeper sense, true to human experience, true to how life feels even if not to how life literally is. So rest now. Let the stories settle. Let the images fade into the darkness behind your closed eyes. The ancient world is gone, but its wisdom remains, encoded in these tales that have survived millennia. You've heard them now, as countless others have heard them before you, as countless others will hear them after you're gone. The myths are eternal, but you are mortal. You'll wake tomorrow to the ordinary world, where the sun is a ball of burning gas, where spiders are just arachnids, where no one drives a golden chariot through the sky. But you'll carry these stories with you, these patterns and images and truths. They'll shape how you see the world, maybe just a little, maybe in ways you won't even notice. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's what myths are meant to do. Not to explain the world scientifically, but to make sense of it emotionally, to give us frameworks for understanding our experiences, to connect us to the long human tradition of telling stories to make meaning from chaos. Sleep well. Dream of heroes and gods, of journeys and transformations, of challenges and consequences. Let the ancient voices whisper their wisdom as consciousness fades, and in the morning, wake refreshed, carrying the myths forward into another day, keeping the old stories alive for one more generation, one more telling, one more listener who needs to hear that they're not alone, that people have always struggled with these same questions, these same fears, these same hopes. The fire burns low, the stories end, the night deepens, and in the silence, Hypnos waits, ready to grant his gift, to bring sleep and dreams, to let consciousness rest until dawn returns and waking life resumes. Until then, the myths will guard your dreams, filling the darkness with ancient light, populating your sleep with characters who have lived in human imagination for 3,000 years and will live there for 3,000 more. Rest now. The old gods watch over you. The ancient stories protect you. And tomorrow, the world will wake again, and the myths will still be there, waiting to be told once more, waiting for new listeners, waiting for the next person who needs to hear about someone who flew too close to the sun, who challenged the gods, who loved so much they descended to the underworld, who persisted through endless punishment, who transformed into something new. These stories are yours now. Carry them well and sleep, knowing that in the morning, the sun will rise, not because Helios drives his chariot, but because that's what suns do. And you'll wake to face another day in this strange, difficult, beautiful world where myths are fiction, but truth is complicated, where gods don't exist, but meaning does, where mortality is certain, but significance remains possible. Good night. Sleep well. Dream deep. The myths are waiting.